Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is expire. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you'll hear the verb expire used is to mean for something to stop being valid. And this something, it could be some type of document, an authorization, a certification. When I think of this, my mind goes to driver's license and passports, right? These items tend to provide us some authorization or certification to drive, to leave the country, whatever it may be, right? But they are only valid through a certain period. So you'll many times see kind of an abbreviation of EXP, date, right? And see a number there. And so we know the date upon which something stops being valid. Another way you'll hear the verb expire used is to mean for a period of time to come to an end. If you've watched many of my videos, you know a lot of my examples are related to sports. I really enjoy watching sports, and many athletic competitions are connected to time. You have so much time to play a period, a half, whatever it might be. And so, as time is coming to an end, you might hear the first half is expiring, right? Meaning that first 45 minutes of play is coming to an end. A third way the verb expire gets used is to mean to die. That's not such a pleasant topic there, but you will sometimes hear or see people use it in that way. A fourth and less common way to use the verb expire is to refer to an exhale, right? So inhale is where we breathe in air, right? And exhale, we push air from our lungs. You should know that the verb expire is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, I need to drop the E on the end before I add ing to form expiring. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made just by adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, expire, ends in a voice sound. It's an sound. And this means that my past tense ending is just going to make a D sound. Okay? So I'm not adding an extra syllable as I say this ending. It should just be expired. Expired. You'll maybe be happy to know we don't have any additional phrasal verbs that change the meaning of this verb, so we can practice on making our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses with some sample or example sentences. Today, let's talk about the past perfect and the simple future using will. We'll start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense many times to note we have a completed action that has occurred at some point in the past. And many times we're noting it's occurred before some other action or before a certain time. Okay? So in many past perfect sentences, you're going to see two verbs in two different verb tenses. You'll see one in the past perfect, right? That's going to be our earliest activity. And then other times you see a second verb in just the simple past tense, and that's what occurred later or after that first action. To make the past perfect, I need two parts to my verb. So my sentences will begin with a subject, right? Then had, that's our past form of have, right? And then we use the participle form of the verb. You can see this in my example. The construction permit had expired a few days before the fire. Okay? So this sentence is going back to that first definition where we talked about authorization. So in many cities and states, you need official permission to build, repair, maybe expand something. And here the permit, or what gives that authorization, was no longer valid. If I want to make a negative sentence in the past perfect, my structure will be to have my subject, then had not, and then the participle. You might also hear the contraction, hadn't. Here's another example sentence. His passport hadn't expired before he left on the trip. Right? That can be kind of a scary thing. I know we're getting to summer travel season, so if you're planning to travel abroad, make sure your passport is not set to expire in the very near future. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, I start with had, then I'm going to have my subject, and then the participle form the verb. You can see that in the example. Had time expired before she released the ball from her hand? Okay. This type of question is something, if you follow basketball, you might hear people ask, right? So for a shot to possibly count, right, it's got to be out of someone's hand before the clock goes to zero. That's time expiring, the period ending. Okay. Now let's talk about the simple future. Today we're going to focus on making sentences with will. Will is very common as people talk about the future and they make predictions. They also use it to make promises or offers as well. And the nice thing about using will in the simple future is that our structure, our pattern for making a sentence is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So we're going to have our subject, we're going to have will, and then the base verb. That's how I make a positive sentence or an affirmative sentence. Here's an example. These canned goods will expire in the next 2 months. You might see this on food. So many times these are dates where maybe it's no longer safe for food or maybe medicine in some cases to be consumed, to be put in our body. Let's look at a negative sentence in the simple future. Again, I'm going to have my subject. I'll use will not and then the base verb. Or you might hear won't and then the base verb. The structure stays the same no matter what the subject is. So another example. These credit card points and rewards won't expire. So many people like to have these kind of extra benefits to using credit cards, and sometimes you have to really look at the details to know if something has to be used in a certain period of time. A third way of talking about the simple future, right, is to make yes or no questions. To do that, I start with will, then I have my subject, and then the base verb. You can see that in my last example. Will the winning lottery ticket expire at the end of the month? In some states, that does happen where you only have a certain period of time to turn in your ticket in order to receive the prize. Now, we're going to spend just a moment talking about a couple words related to our verb expire. And the first word we're going to discuss is the noun expiration. Just like our verb, this noun can have a couple different meanings. We'll talk about 2 of them today. The first way we use the noun expiration is to refer to the fact of something coming to an end, to reaching some point. Okay. An example of this might be, what are your plans after the expiration of this lease? Okay. A lease is a rental agreement, right? So many times our rental agreements, they last for a period of time. Might be a month or 6 months, a year, right? And here we're asking the date at which this ends, right? What are your plans following that? A second way you'll hear the noun expiration used is to refer to someone's death or perhaps the kind of the last time they exhale, they breathe out. An example of this, her expiration came after a long battle with cancer. Okay. And one more related word for us to talk about, I think you might encounter the phrase expiration date, another noun here. So you might hear this used to describe the date after which a product should not be sold because there is this belief that it's no longer safe or maybe it's no longer effective. An example of this might be, this medicine's expiration date is tomorrow. Right? So the company that has manufactured this has decided this medicine might no longer be as effective or possibly safe after this particular date. A second way you'll hear expiration date used is to refer to the date after which something is no longer in effect or no longer valid. An example of how you might hear this used, what's the credit card's expiration date? What is the credit card's expiration date? So that's a really common question. It's a common field. So if you're doing any online shopping, any online purchasing, again, you'll usually be asked for the card's expiration date. Here, this is the kind of the last month and year, month and year related to credit cards, where something is going to be valid or effective. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.